A very profound welcome to the Clarity Challenge. My name is Mason I.B. West, College Director at the Law of Life Institute and Facilitator at the Clarity Challenge. For 2 episodes now, we have been discussing about partner weakness management. Profound discussion, trust me. This stemmed out of conversation starters that we had from day one. Conversation started bordered on 5 questions. Number 1, we asked, what are your strengths? Then we asked, what are your weaknesses? And then what are your partner's strengths? And then what are your partner's weaknesses? Then we asked, how does your strength complement his or her weaknesses? We said that these are profound questions that you must ask as you make partner choice decisions. Profound questions. Profound because, you see, as you do relationships, you will come to that point where you will understand that you are not going to get married to somebody who thinks like you, talks like you, dresses like you, behaves like you, whose preferences are 100% like yours, who likes and dislikes are going to be 100% yours. That's not going to happen. If that happens, what you're going to experience as a marriage is going to be very boring. It's going to be boring because at the end of the day, variety remains the spice of life. And so when we say it's important that you get married to somebody, or you choose somebody with whom you are compatible, I think it is important that I bring you to that place where you realize that compatibility by itself is not synonymous with similarity. I repeat, compatibility is not similarity. Compatibility means we are different, but we complement each other. Compatibility. Usually I always use a piece of pen to do that illustration. As when you look at the body of a pen, fountain pen, whatever kind of pen, and you look at the cover of the pen, whatever kind of pen, you realize that the body of the pen and the cover of the pen are not in any way similar. But trust me, they are compatible. They are analogous. They are compatible. They complete each other. And once they come together, they are such an incredible beauty to behold. So that should convey in its clearest term an understanding to us that compatibility is not similarity. So when you want to make partner choices, it's important that, number 1, you know who you're dealing in. Know who he is or who she is. Know who they are, know what their strengths are, know what their weaknesses are. Know yourself too. Know what your strengths are, know what your weaknesses are, and then be intentional with how much you guys complement each one the other. The reason this is important, profoundly important, is because at the end of it all, if you do not complement each other, then the conflict rate is going to be exponentially very high. And I'm not sure that's what you had in mind when you were going into the relationship. So you want to be sure that you guys complement each other, you guys make each other look the most beautiful couple that there is. This is so important. This is so profound. The reasons are obvious all by themselves. And so taking it up from there, we established in the course of our last 2 episodes that if you are strong, you have strength in a given area, and your partner is weak in a given area, if your strength doesn't cover their weakness, that strength is useless. In fact, that's no strength. That is weakness in its full-blown dimension. What strength does is that it covers weaknesses. It doesn't expose weaknesses. So your strength must accomplish its purpose, otherwise it's useless. What that also does is that in a relationship where there is understanding, as soon as issues come up, the partner who is strong in that area is always the one that takes the driver's seat. Because it's not about who, it's not about individuals, it's about a corporate entity. And so the person who is good at it takes the driver's seat, and the outcome is better for everybody. It is the reason why you want to understand these things about your partner, and then each one stands in for the other as you do the relationships. This is what made us realize that if this is going to be the case, then you need to, in its clearest terms, understand the strengths and the weaknesses of your partner. We established that God Himself recognizes that human beings have weaknesses and they have strengths. And we read Romans chapter 14 from verse 1. We took it up to that from that point, and then we were able to come to terms with the fact that now we have agreed that we are going to be different in so many areas. We're going to be strong or weak in so many areas. Then as you do your relationships and then issues begin to come up, you need to be able to first and foremost identify what's the problem, mention, name, specify the problem that you're dealing with. As we looked at the presentations in class by our model couple participants, all kinds of what they considered weaknesses were presented. Some of them said their partner gets angry too quickly. Some of them said their partner is always snobbish when they're angry. All kinds of things were presented. My challenge was that I was wondering if everything that were itemized, several of them, I don't have the time to talk about them again, if everything they have itemized is really a weakness. That became my challenge. Now that took us to the next level where we said, okay, to be able to get this in its clearest terms, we need to categorize these things into three. We said number one, it's a mistake. Number two is a weakness. Number three is a wrongdoing. We said that first and foremost, it is important that you're able to define what you're dealing with in your relationship or dealing with as you date, as you court, as you are engaged. You need to know what it is. If it's a mistake, then we must come to terms with the fact that one thing about mistakes is that we do not expect them to reoccur. People make mistakes because of misinterpretation of truth. It means that as soon as light is shed in that area, we expect that there should be a change in their actions. So mistakes are not expected to reoccur because they are products of misinformation. But when it came to weakness, we realized that weaknesses are supposed to reoccur. The reason weaknesses should reoccur is because if you understand the architecture of a weakness, it is ingrained in the nature of people. It has become their nature or their second nature. It is something that has overpowered, overwhelmed, and enslaved them. They probably have been struggling with it long before you got married to them. So coming into their lives to keep reminding them of it doesn't fix it. They don't need that reminder. If at all, at best, what they need is help to deal with it. Then we talked about wrongdoing. Some mistakes can lead to wrongdoing. The problem with wrongdoing is that they are offenses. They could be criminal in nature. And if they assume a criminal dimension, then you have a battle with the state. And the way we deal with wrongdoings is different from the way we deal with weaknesses, is different from the way we deal with mistakes. Having categorized these things into their different dimensions, we have come to understand exactly what a weakness is. Now, if it is true that we have understood what a weakness is, then the question we have for today, part 3, is how do we deal with weaknesses? How do we manage weaknesses? How do we help our partners deal with the right things? Never forget, we have established that the proper thing for us to do while we are dating is to do proper partner weakness recognition. We already said that. The reason partner weakness recognition is critical, is fundamental, is indispensable, is non-negotiable, is because you need to decide, can I live with this weakness the rest of my life? The reason is because weaknesses are expected to reoccur. They are literally second nature. If there are weaknesses that you can live with, fantastic, because there's no guarantee that they will change. If there are weaknesses you can't spend the rest of your life with, you want to make up your mind if this is the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. Or are they weaknesses that you have the skill set to help them manage and overcome it? We rarely have partners who have that skill set to help their partners manage their weaknesses. It is the reason why oftentimes weaknesses aggravate. People are virtually angels at the time they accept to get married to us and get married to us. But while they're with us in the relationship, they become worse than devils. Oftentimes, it is because of handling. It is handling that worsens weaknesses. It is handling that worsens people's behavioral tendencies, the way we have handled them. Give the same person to somebody else who understands how to manage that weakness. You'll be amazed how much of a saint that person can be. Sweetheart, it is the reason we're saying there is a way to go about partner weakness management. Of course, we all have weaknesses. You have a weakness, just like your partner has a weakness. We don't all have weaknesses in the same areas. So when you are dealing with issues, handling issues that has to do with your partner's weakness, begin with the consciousness that you also have weaknesses. Plenty of it. And if every one of us were to hold on to our partner's weaknesses, then there will be no marriage. There will be no society to live in. So it's so important that you understand the gravity of a weakness. First of all, what you're dealing with is a weakness. If it is a weakness, not a mistake, not an act of, not a wrongdoing, it's a weakness. It's not just an act of error, it's a weakness. Now, when you understand the gravity, the implications, the seriousness, the import of a weakness, the first thing that happens is that your approach will be different. Your approach must be decided from that point when you realize that what you're dealing with is a weakness and you can handle it like the person made a mistake. He didn't make a mistake. That's his life. That's the way he functions. That's the way he lives. He can't do without smoking. Listen, you can't use embargoes. You can't use sanctions to change your weakness. Hey, listen, if this marriage is going to continue, that must stop. Excuse me? He's been dealing with that before you came in. He was overwhelmed. He was overcome. The best you can do is to help him sort it out. Not embargoes. Ain't going to make no difference. It's so important that we get this clear. You can correct a partner if they're making mistakes. Listen, you can't do that because you can do that because mistakes are not expected to reoccur. But excuse me, weaknesses must reoccur. It's a way of life. It's something they live on, they depend on, they survive on. That's how they are wired now. It may not be how they were born. And of course, we said in our last video that some weaknesses pre-exist the individuals. They were born with it. They are helpless. They don't need to be reminded that they have issues they're dealing with. The best you can do is to help them. So how you look at these things must change. So the question will be, what do you do? You can't be correcting a weakness if you understand the meaning of weakness, following our definitions in our last series. As a matter of fact, when you continuously make reference to a person's weakness, what that amounts to is called nagging. I don't care whether it's your spouse, whether it's your son, your daughter, they're dealing with drugs, they're dealing with addictions, they're dealing with pornography, they're dealing with masturbation, they're dealing with drugs, they're dealing with smoking, they're dealing with procrastination, they don't know how to keep to time, whatever it is that your partner is dealing with. You can't correct it. You can't change it by correcting it. You can't change it. The best you do is that you begin to nag. And let me tell you something about nagging. Nagging will create an emotional gap between you and your partner. And this emotional gap will lead to a physical gap. They will avoid you. No, you shut them down emotionally, then they will avoid you physically. And once that begins to happen, you'll be shocked that the person you married and the person you're going to find in the house is going to be a radical departure, exponentially different. And you're not going to like what you meet. You're not going to like what you're going to get out of that relationship. This is so profound. Listen, if you begin to think that correcting a weakness will eliminate it, it means you don't understand the full weight and the implication of a weakness. You don't. You don't. And that is why it's important that you go and listen to what it is that we discussed in our previous edition and then what I'm even saying now. Understand that a weakness is like somebody is in a cage, it needs help. Understand that. So if you want to help your partner deal with their weaknesses, the first thing is this: it is not correction that eliminates a weakness. No, the first thing that you got to do is acceptance of the reality. You must accept the reality. This is a weakness. You must accept the reality. This person is helpless. You must accept the reality. If this person probably has a choice, is she's not going to do this. You must accept the reality of who they are. Listen, when you talk about weakness, that's who your partner is. It's weak in that area. It's enslaved. It's a captive. It's a helpless. Doesn't know what to do. It's the reason why I'm amazed that people get married to somebody. Before you got married to them, they humanize. Before you got married to them, there are certain things they do, and they probably have been enslaved by that tendency for only God knows how long, 5 years, 10 years, before you come into their space, and you loved them. You probably were aware, or you were not aware. If you are not aware that that's what their lifestyle has been before, it's a demonstration of your laziness. If you were aware and you accepted to marry them, then it's okay, but not with the motive, ulterior motive, to come in and change them, because you can't change nobody. You can't change nobody if you take active steps. Passive steps, yes. What are those passive steps? Number one, accept them for who they are. The only proof that you have accepted them is that you celebrate them. Listen, when you tolerate people, you've not accepted them. Listen, tolerating somebody and accepting somebody are mutually exclusive. They're not the same thing. They're not going to work together. When you tolerate people, you treat them like less than humans. When you tolerate people, you treat them like trash. When you tolerate people, you make them feel like you're just managing them. If you tolerate people, you always have this body language, these tendencies. Everything about you shows that they are not accepted. They are less than standard. They're not up to your mind. They're not up to your specification. You're always reprimanding them. You're always trying to correct them. You're always trying to tell them that's not acceptable. You're always, even when you don't say it, every other thing about you, even when you stonewall them, all to show to them that no, I don't accept you. When people are not accepted, they know. As soon as people are accepted, trust me, the transformation is mind-blowing. Trust me. Is mind-blowing, because as soon as you truly accept your partner and their weakness, and I'm going to talk extensively about the law of acceptance. Is a major curriculum, a major course in the Love Life Institute. I'm going to deal with that differently. But when you accept people, the first place, the first area that it reflects, the first thing that shows that you've accepted people is empathy comes in. It puts you in the shoe of the person, because you realize what they're dealing with. You realize what they're struggling with. You realize how helpless they've become. And all that's going on in your mind is, how can I help this person? And as soon as empathy comes in, the next thing that follows is support. And as soon as support comes in, the next thing that follows is patience. You become patient with them because you want to see them grow, see them succeed, see them overcome. And as you become patient with them, if you have the skill set to train them, to teach them, you begin to show them what to do, what not to do. You begin to help them. That's if they're going to accept to be helped. It is the reason why when it comes to training, when it comes to exposure, third party outsourcing is so critical, it's so profound, it's the best thing that you're going to do. So that leads to training, then you expose them to the things that they need to do, and then give them the space, the patience, the time to practice what they've been trained and what they've been exposed to. to see how change comes. But like I said, not many of us have the requisite skills to be, and the patience profoundly, to be able to train our partners. In fact, one of the most difficult things you find in relationships is that most partners can't even train their other partner how to drive a car without a quarrel, without a fight, without all kinds of antagonisms. And so it is the reason why, because we don't have the patience to wait for them to unlearn, then to learn, and then to relearn, then we might need to do outsourcing. But I know that once you truly accept a person, the true reality of what they are and what they got to deal with, you probably might be able to help as rarely as that can be. This is so important. Ladies and gentlemen, acceptance is profound because nobody will be willing to change in an atmosphere of rejection. As soon as somebody feels rejected, they are going to switch over into survival mode. As soon as anybody feels rejected, they are going to switch over into self or defense mode. An atmosphere of rejection will make people fight back. An atmosphere of rejection will make people want to defend themselves. And once they put up that mode, they can never change. If they were a 3 of 10, they will become worse. They will become a 2 of 10, a 0 of 10. If they were even doing well as a 5 of 10, they'll become worse. They'll become a 2 of 10, a 1 of 10, a 0. It is the reason why the angel you married is now a devil, because of exactly just how you handled them. It is the reason why I always tell people, if somebody was good, an angel like you told us when you got married to them, and today they are now devils, don't you think we should ask you some questions? Why is it that we do not want to take responsibility for things, for our marriages, for our relationships, for when things get messed up in our hands? No, we have to accept responsibility for the things that are going on. Almost all of the times, it is how we have handled our partner's weaknesses that has introduced rejection and that introduced all kinds of stuff into the dynamics and put them in the defense mode, which has made all our efforts go down the drain. A lot of us are already spent, frustrated, confused, helpless, because we got it wrong from the onset. And the problem with that frustration is that it is not number one, but at least one of the 4 key things that every relationship struggles with: unfulfilled expectations. Many of us have unrealistic expectations about our partners, unrealistic expectations about how they're going to change, how they're going to be saints, how they're going to be perfect, how they're going to fit into our lives without any struggle, without much ado. And because we didn't have realistic expectations, now we're frustrated. But the point is that we must engage the forces of acceptance. The reason empathy comes into play is because, listen, every weakness in your partner points to a past struggle. Every time you see somebody weak in a particular area, they've struggled with stuff. It points to where they are coming from. It points to what is chasing them. It points to what has conquered them and made them captives. Everybody you see on the face of the earth is running from something or running to something. If you don't understand what they are running from and what they are running into, you might not be useful to them. You might not be able to make them better than you met them. This is profound. This is important. As soon as and until we can put ourselves in people's shoes, we can never be of help to them. Empathy is profound. We can never be able to provide the needed support that they need. We can never be able to provide the needed patience that is required to help them sail through life. And that is why acceptance and empathy are the breeding ground for the needed support, for the needed patience, and even for training. Because even when training is outsourced, even when they go for therapy, it will make little or no difference if they come back to a place, a home, a partner that has not accepted them. If they come back to a partner that shows no empathy, that shows no support. Training is critical. It leads to exposure and then provides a platform for practice. But these are not going to make a difference if there is no environment that is accommodative, if there's no support system, a community that encourages them, listen, it is so important that we must understand how to manage the sensitivities of our partners. This is so important. I agree that it is also important that the one that is to be taught must be willing to be helped. But oftentimes, it is the environment not being welcoming, not accepting, not providing an environment for unlearning, for relearning in a situation like this that makes it almost impossible for people to take those little steps that they need to change. Even children, when they learn how to walk, they got to fall again and again before they learn how to stand. And so it's so important. Sometimes familiarity and other factors make it impossible for partners to provide their partners with this kind of environment, which is why we recommend outsourcing therapy as the best option. But never forget, when you outsource it, when you encourage them to go for therapy and for counseling, back home provide the environment that they need to experience change. Let me round up in this form. Number one, there is a difference between fighting a weakness and fighting a person. A lot of us oftentimes, in trying to bring our partner to the place of the kind of change in behavior that we expect, we begin to attack the person, thinking we are attacking the weakness. The line between attacking the person and attacking the problem is so thin that you don't know when you start attacking the person, when you start fighting the person. And as soon as you start fighting the person, as soon as you end up fighting their persons and not the weakness, you've lost the battle. You're going to have a worse person at the end of the day. Next, listen, you must connect before you can correct anybody. If there is no connection, your correction will worsen the situation. It's like pouring water on the back of a dog. There has to first and foremost be a connection. Connect with them, relate with them, empathize with them, understand their situation, and then let them feel you. Let them have that intimacy, that connection. It doesn't matter whether it's a weakness, whether it's a mistake. If you don't connect, you can't correct. All your good intentions are going to end up counterproductive. There has to, first of all, be a connection before the corrections are going to work. Never forget, never make it a motive, ulterior motive, to change people. Let them be who they are. Accept their individuality. Accept that they will be different in the way they process truth, in the way they look at life, in the way they analyze things. Accept them for who they are. Celebrate them. You're going to experience heaven on earth. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you got some value. Questions are welcome. Comments are going to be taken, and I'll be there to help. Thank you so much. I'll see you again. Do have a wonderful day.